Hi everyone, it's Terry from Lorien. Hope everyone's keeping well, and the the Black Friday kind of events are all behind us. I am really excited to do the third part of a conversation with, and this week is with someone I've known for so many years now, who I have seen personally. So
Forever.
it has been forever, Robyn, hasn't it? It feels like
Yeah.
that. So I've seen Robyn's career go from a digital marketing kind of manager and moved up to now lead one of the biggest department stores in the world and their performance strategy. And someone I've got an amazing relationship with. So I'm sure this is going to be an amazing video. So Robyn, I think the first thing is to thank you obviously for your time.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's always lovely to talk to you, Terry.
See, this is why we get on. So I think
Yeah.
for those that don't know you, obviously, the way that I think the best place to start this is kind of from the beginning and kind of tell us about your career so far.
Yeah, of course. So I've actually been in digital marketing for about 11 years. And my journey began when I worked for a tech startup company called NextJump. So NextJump, they basically powered employee benefits platforms, and I was brought on to kind of manage fashion brands that sat within those accounts and made offerings. So that was my real step into digital, and within that setting, that's when I first became exposed to affiliate marketing and CRM. Those are the kind of channels that we used. And after a year, I kind of realized that I really loved digital and digital marketing, but that I really loved fashion, and more specifically I wanted to get into luxury and premium. And as you know, Terry, I've kind of stuck to my guns with that one over the last 10 years. But I started to have a think about really kind of what I wanted to do and plan kind of what I wanted to do in the next 5 or 10 years. And I ended up making a list of all of the companies that I wanted to work for. I ended up shortlisting 5 companies, brands that I wanted to work for. And then my first kind of big target was that I wanted to become, I wanted to head up digital for either Alexander McQueen, Vivienne Westwood, or Stella McCartney. Those were the 3 brands that I wanted to kind of go after. But after speaking to kind of recruiters and when I started to apply for brands, it became very apparent to me that if I was going to do that, I needed to get a broader understanding of all of these digital channels. So at that point, I could have gone into a specialism, so I could have specialized in affiliates or, gone down the CRM route. But, to be a kind of strategist, I needed to get an understanding of all of these channels. So instead of going and working for a brand, I thought that the best strategic move at that point was to go and work for an agency. And I was very lucky to get a job as an account manager at an agency called 7 Things Media, which is no longer running, but they had an amazing portfolio of brands. So I ended up working with the likes of Agent Provocateur, Liberty of London, Ted Baker. And whilst my speciality was in affiliates, I was responsible for kind of rolling out multi-channel strategies. So that was where I got my first taste of display marketing, PPC, SEO, and kind of increased my understanding of affiliates. Social also started to kind of come on the scene then as well.
Yeah.
So I literally used that year to absorb as much as I could. I mean, agencies aren't for me, so I didn't want to stay working agency side. But following that, I did apply for started applying to work for brands, and my first job position for a brand was a brand called London Boutiques, which was I think they were trying to be a bit of a competitor of Farfetch. I was there for quite a short time, so only 6 months, but it was an amazing experience because that was my first step into working for a brand, but understanding the full scope of everything that goes into running a digital pure play business. So following that, I got made redundant from that particular role, and I was pretty devastated. However, very luckily, I actually managed to land the position at Vivienne Westwood, and I was brought on board as their digital marketing manager, and I was basically the lead for kind of sorting out all of their digital strategy. So that was everything from the performance, setting up all of the performance marketing channels. So that was setting up PPC from scratch, affiliates from scratch, bringing on their new kind of CRM technology, all of the content, digital content creation, so all of the content that's sat on site, and then kind of right through to like the relaunch of their new website, so even like the customer experience. So it was a huge remit. I was there for 3 years, obviously kind of super excited to land my dream job within 3 years. So yeah, I mean, like I absolutely loved it, but then I kind of had to start thinking about the next steps. And yeah, as I started kind of looking around, I think the feedback that I was getting from recruiters was that, it was great that I kind of had such a huge remit, but I really needed to start to get some experience with bigger budgets, bigger revenue driving sites, and, maybe companies that were a little bit more commercially focused. So again, I mean, I veered away from my luxury experience, and I took another strategic move to go and do a contract role at Marks and Spencer. So at Marks and Spencer, I was hired on the international team, and I did kind of the digital strategies for the EU and Americas, I think it was, and that was kind of end to end. So that was again all of the performance marketing. I worked with the CRM team there, the social and influencer teams, and I kind of got my hands on some big budgets and some big revenue generating initiatives and big revenue targets. So no recruiters could argue with me about that side. And then finally, following that, I ended up getting a kind of short-term contract. Well, it's meant to be a short-term contract at Selfridges on the performance marketing team. At that point, they were doing quite a big restructure, I guess, of their digital team. So it was a very exciting time, and I ended up being offered a permanent position there. So yeah, I'm currently a performance marketing strategist, and yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
And here we are. So I think the first kind of question I've got for you, Robyn, is kind of the last 9 months have really showcased the importance of e-commerce to brands and the need for them to adapt and focus their digital strategies. What trends have you seen from the market that have really helped brands succeed?
Well, I think it's interesting that you say like what's helped brands succeed. It's also, I think brands have either excelled or they've completely sunk. They've either kind of embraced what COVID is thrown at them, or, they've not been able to adapt, not been able to kind of iterate their strategies, and not been kind of creative enough. And I think it's really kind of been a time of polarization. So you've either seen brands accelerate and do phenomenally well and excel, or unfortunately it's been a really tough time for some of those retail brands. And we all read in the news weekly like how some of them are just kind of not surviving. I guess in terms of like key trends for success that I've seen, it has been those brands that have really kind of understood the customer and that full customer funnel. I read an article this week that said that digital acquisition has reached levels that were expected in 2025 already. Wow. In this year. So that just shows the pure kind of influx of customers coming onto the internet and driving that demand. And I think it's the brands that haven't been so kind of rigid in what they want their customers to see and do. It's been actually like listening to the market and trying to kind of interpret that and be there at the right places at the right time. You know, if you look at kind of digitally, that full customer funnel, you know, right from the awareness to channels that drive kind of more acquisition to those that are more at the converting stage of that funnel, you have to kind of operate that and understand that full view and be present in the right ways at the right time to kind of harness and capture all of that demand. I think secondly, and kind of leading on from that point, it is the messaging and it's your kind of inventory and your product that's suited to those demands as well. So, you know, I think a huge adjustment for retail has been we always follow kind of these seasonal trends. You know, we know that there's going to be summer dresses or bikinis because people are going on holidays. That's just not been the case this year. So it's been that need to kind of adapt and listen to what the customer needs and wants are. And, you know, it's that kind of storytelling piece. So, you know, we've all been like locked down at home in our gardens. It's a kind of making a bit more light of that and kind of catering to those needs. And I guess like thirdly, it's that expectation now where customers haven't been able to go in store, particularly in luxury. You know, they go into store and they expect that kind of service. So it's been those brands that has been able to take that service from offline to online and, you know, kind of create something above and beyond what they have done previously. So whether that be with, you know, giving customers like the most optimum delivery proposition, or whether it's the content that kind of like lives and breathes on their social media or on their sites, you know, those are the brands and the retailers that you've really kind of seen excel. So yeah, I'd say it's those three things really. It's the understanding of the full customer funnel and like harnessing all of that, the customer needs and wants. It's you know, kind of understanding your customer experience and what you can kind of deliver them from offline to online, and just being able to adjust and take what you have in terms of your product and adapting that to what is going on in the wider world.
Amazing. And I think the $1 million question is, who's kind of getting it right? Who's doing marketing well and why?
So yeah, it's again funny you should say this, but I've always got like a list of my go-to brands that I think are phenomenal at digital, and it's those brands that are excelling. So, you know, one of my number one brands that you just can't argue with that is amazing is Nike. So Nike, they hit an all-time high in terms of their share prices in October. So that's despite them having to close 900 stores worldwide. And on top of that, all of the wholesalers that have closed their stores. But that's because they just have an absolutely solid digital content strategy and digital strategy as a whole. They're just absolutely brilliant. You know, their e-commerce is brilliant. All of the things that they do around their kind of apps and their interaction and their engagement, they're really good at kind of creating communities, which is, I think, in a time of COVID has been super important, and they've completely like managed to like harness that and almost exploit that, and as a result they are kind of driving revenue. But, you know, similarly, like Gucci is one of my favorite brands. And, you know, the last 4 or 5 years, digital is literally at the center of everything they do. I think they were one of the first brands, like mono luxury super brands, to kind of really, really even take things like SEO very, very seriously. So, but again, like their response to COVID, like they were very, very quick to be one of the first to, you know, launch digital appointments and like these like shopping experience through live streaming. So very innovative, but like at the forefront of doing that. And then I'd say like the last ones who are absolute giants and not destroying, they're kind of pioneering in the world. It's Farfetch. They're just kind of completely unstoppable, and I mean their digital teams I know are extensive. Their performance marketing teams, they've got amazing team of experts there, and it's really kind of showing in what they're doing.
Amazing. And I think it leads on to the importance of your channels. So over the years, there's been new channels coming in and evolving. But what channels have you seen recently kind of really propel?
Yeah, I think all of the channels have had to do some adjusting, and I think we do need to kind of look at this time of COVID, because this potentially is the new norm. You know, you can't deny social media. Like social media, the investment of brands, like the percentage of their investment going into that channel every year is increasing and increasing. And I think, you know, if we look particularly in this like COVID time, Instagram has just had a monumental impact. You know, just by the very nature of what's happened this year, more people are spending more and more time on their phones, on their mobiles, and actually on these social platforms. So I think social has always been associated with kind of more upper funnel activity and brand awareness. But what's actually happened is it's a place where people go and they discover new brands, but you're actually starting to work down the funnel. So where you can now kind of go on Instagram and you can, you know, be exposed to a new brand. It's kind of what you're able to actually do is sell someone a product, and then they can actually buy that product in the app. So it's not just the top of the funnel anymore, it's working its way right down. So I think, yeah, social media has kind of gone from strength to strength. I think Instagram, particularly this year, has been extremely valuable. And I think a really interesting one has been around influencer marketing as well. Influencer marketing is, I have to admit, it's something that sometimes I've not been really kind of always bought into as much as the other channels. But, you know, I think especially with kind of content creation and that, you know, especially in this first lockdown that we had, brands couldn't use photo studios. I remember seeing on ASOS, they were trying to kind of get a bit creative with like using images on hangers and, you know, not on model shots, but then they started actually using influencers and that influencer content. And actually it's working really, really well. Also, just to those two channels, like when I'm talking about social and influencers, I think one of the reasons it has kind of taken off even pre-COVID is because there's a lot more kind of data and tracking available now. And we're a lot more, we've got a lot more of a clearer understanding of the commercial benefits of these channels and what they add, you know, especially with kind of things like multi-channel attribution, and, you know, some of these other very rich data points that we're now kind of feeding into. I think we're starting to understand the true value of these channels, which were at one point just kind of brushed aside and, you know, not really considered valuable.
Amazing. Well, look, all of that insight is absolutely incredible. I think this moves us on to the second part of what these videos are there for, which is the future generation of digital marketeers. So, like I said, I've followed your career for some time. It's gone from strength to strength, which has put you in such a good position now. But what would you say is the makeup of a good digital marketing specialist?
I think it's a bit of it's two things really, which are almost a bit contradictory, but it's understanding all of the detail, but within the bigger picture. So firstly, like something that I've like really learned is that you need to understand your targets, your budgets, your finances. You need to understand kind of what your KPIs are, and you need to be able to take that and add a narrative to that, because it's all very well thinking that you're performing well, but you have to explain that and kind of justify that to bigger stakeholders in order to get more budget for you to get to do even better. So you need to be on top of that detail, but as you go into roles which might cover a broader remit, you also need to start to kind of understand that bigger picture. And it's not always understanding every single tiny detail, because we've only got one brain and a limited capacity, but it's being able to kind of contextualize that from like standing back and looking at a business. So you need to understand where a channel sits within a performance marketing team, where that performance marketing team sits within digital, and where within digital digital sits within a broader business. And that's kind of quite tricky to do. I think probably where I learnt this first was actually at Vivienne Westwood, because I did have such a huge remit, and it became very apparent to me very, very quickly that I needed to go and work with every single department within the business. Like, digital should have a place in every single department within a business. So it meant going into those different areas, those different stakeholders, educating them about business, educating them about digital, but in a way that was interesting to them. Yeah. And I found that the more that I kind of gave them, the more that they could kind of give me back. So, for example, one of the examples that I always use is, we had this amazing woman, Bridget, who was like the head of couture, and me going and talking to her about revenue and my ROAS targets wasn't going to be of interest to her. But if she saw one of her beautiful dresses on Instagram that had got 5,000 likes, then Bridget was able to give me like all of this amazing information, all of this like wealth of history about the company that I could then go and push across, like use as content for Vivienne Westwood. But that's the same across every single department. Like, the way that you speak to a buying and merchandising team is going to be very different to how you speak to a content team, and that's going to be completely different to how you speak to a finance department. But you need their buy-in, and if you can prove that they need you, then everything works very nicely.
Amazing. And I always end these conversations with the same question, which is so important to me, but is the future generation of e-commerce and digital. So what would be your advice to digital marketers trying to make a career for themselves in the fashion retail kind of space that we all kind of live in right now?
Yeah, I think I guess one of my biggest pieces of advice is, if you can, always to plan at least 2 steps ahead, or if not more. I think you can get very blinkered when you're going into like a new role, focusing so heavily on the salary or the job title or whatever, when actually you need to kind of understand what your CV is going to look like as a whole. Not every job that you go into is going to tick all of the boxes that you're going to need for a job that you're applying for in 5 years' time. And it's okay to like have a job for a couple of years that's going to fit a specific purpose and help you along that road. So yeah, I definitely would say not to get too bogged down into the like here and now, and like look at the bigger picture. I think it's really important to always be researching and looking and reading as to what is going on in the industry. I'm as guilty as anyone is getting very kind of bogged down in my whatever company I'm working for, into that little bubble, but always like make time to read around and like learn from competitors and learn from even other industries within digital as to what's working. And I promise I'm not saying this just for you, Terry, but actually listen to the feedback from recruiters, and also, people who you've interviewed with, and just what their feedback's been, because that if you can understand why you didn't get a job or you don't have that certain experience, then you know what you need to do so you will never get that response again. So that would be my advice.
Amazing, Robyn. It's been an absolute privilege, as always, catching up. And thank you so much for your time. And I am sure we will speak soon.
Oh, always, Terry.
Cheers, Robyn. I'll speak soon.
Thank you for having me. Bye.